John lost his job when the company went under and became unemployed. I asked my uncle to put him in his company. A year later, I received a picture of John and his mistress, Natalie, along with a message on my phone.
I'm John's mistress. Can't wait to live together soon.
The next day, after leaving the message on read, I came home from my work to find most of our furniture gone. There was a note left on the kitchen board in John's handwriting.
I've moved in with Natalie.
I called John. "Where are you now?"
Do you want me to hire you?
A sickly sweet voice answered, "Probably Natalie."
If you're okay with being my housekeeper, I can give you my address.
Natalie seemed to be under a huge misconception. "All right then, I guess we're getting divorced. Goodbye to my $7.80 an hour husband."
Say no more.
Oh, she really has no clue. Poor mistress. I told her I'd contact him once the divorce was ready, then hung up the phone. "Just wait. I'll drag you from the height of happiness to the depths of despair soon." I'm Emily, a 50-year-old housewife. I work for my uncle's company. I met my husband, John, at a friend's gathering 20 years ago. I thought he was a wonderful person, and when he approached me as we were leaving, we started seeing each other after a few dates. John lost his dad in middle school, but his mom, Jane, comes from a wealthy family. He graduated from a prestigious university and works at a major company, so his attitude was always one of financial and emotional security. Perhaps because of this, John was always very attentive to me. He would meticulously prepare gifts, lavish dinners, hotels with beautiful night views, and even bouquets for anniversaries. I felt like a princess and was over the moon. When we decided to get married, I was thrilled at the thought of building our happy home with him. Little did I know I would soon regret it. It was easy to imagine Jane, who had lived alone with her son since his middle school days, interfering in our married life. But living in a nearby town, Jane never visited our apartment, nor did she rush us over the phone to visit her.
It seems she's busy with theater, traveling with friends, and concerts.
Hearing that, I was relieved. Soon after, I found out I was pregnant, and Jane and John were even happier than I was, and we savored the joy together. But it was around this time that dark clouds began to gather over our marriage. John started going out every weekend. Even while I was bedridden with morning sickness, he would nonchalantly go skiing, camping, or on trips, making me question his sanity. "We're married now, yet you leave every weekend. Isn't that strange?" When I complained, John tilted his head.
It's impossible to take pregnant Emily along. How about I invite some friends over, like 5 or 6 people each week?
John's face lit up.
That way you'll have fun too, Emily. We can have a barbecue, and everyone can bring their own beers and meats. It'll take your mind off things.
I was dumbfounded. Did he really say this knowing I couldn't keep food down because of nausea? "Of course not," I yelled, and John frowned in annoyance.
What's wrong with spending my own money to go out on weekends?
"I'm not telling you not to go. I just want you to be considerate since you're no longer single." John looked even more exasperated.
That's your job, Emily.
"What?"
You should be more grateful for the comfortable life you have thanks to me. I work for us, so you should take better care of me. You're my wife after all.
he said arrogantly, dragging his suitcase out of the house. I listened to the sound of the car engine fading away and sank into the couch, feeling depressed. I understood John's point. But neglecting a pregnant wife to drink late with colleagues on weekdays and hang out with single friends every weekend, that's a different story. He hasn't let go of his bachelor mindset. Will he develop a sense of fatherhood when our child is born next year? I could only hope he would change. Eventually, a healthy baby boy was born. John and I named him Kyle, and he grew quickly. I had John tell Jane not to come to the maternity hospital so I could spend some quiet time in my room. However, the aftermath was intense. After I was discharged, Jane barged into my apartment multiple times with her friends. The first time was right after I had finally managed to put Kyle to sleep. The doorbell rang just as I sat down on the couch to rest, making my heart jump. Checking the front monitor, I saw Jane and a few older women. I reluctantly opened the door, and Jane and her friends stomped in, heading straight for the living room and rushing to the baby bed.
Oh, how adorable. Isn't he? He looks just like John.
Really? I don't see it.
You're just saying that because you love your son. Oh, look, his eyes are open.
Kyle, who had been dozing off, scrunched up his face and began to cry loudly.
Emily, soothe him quickly. It's not good to let him cry too much. And by the way, I'll take some tea. Earl Grey and some pastries, please.
Suppressing my irritation, I picked Kyle up and soothed him. Jane and her friends crowded around me, poking Kyle's cheeks and patting his head like he was a pet.
How nice. I wish I had a grandchild soon.
I have 2 granddaughters. I'm telling my daughter-in-law she needs to have a boy next.
Hearing these conversations, Jane looked pleased with herself. Jane and her friends, who came like a storm, chatted and ate pastries, leaving crumbs all over before finally leaving. When I complained to John after he got home from work, he smiled for some reason.
Mom must have wanted to show off her grandson to her friends. It's cute, really.
I couldn't believe it. Listen, it's my 3rd day after discharge. I'm still dizzy and feeding Kyle every 2 hours while doing housework. His indifferent response annoyed me. It took me 2 hours to get Kyle back to sleep. Please tell Jane no more unannounced visits. John frowned visibly at my request.
Mom and her friends came to celebrate. You should be grateful, not complaining.
I was exasperated by how little John understood. I should have gone back to my parents' house, even if it meant taking a long flight and train ride. My parents live with my brother's family, who have young kids, so I didn't want to burden them. John, you don't help with childcare at all, so you don't understand. Please take care of Kyle sometimes. I pleaded earnestly. Like on weekends, watch Kyle for an hour so I can go to the salon or relax at a cafe.
You just want to slack off as a mom.
John laughed, seemingly amused.
Every mom takes care of their kids on their own. If you can't do it, you're a failure as a mother.
That's terrible. Don't say that.
It's the truth.
John snapped, glaring at me.
How can you ask me to ruin my precious day off? I'm the one feeding you and our kid. That should be enough. If you want to be pampered, go back to your parent house. And don't come back.
John threw these cold words at me before heading to the bathroom. As I wiped my eyes, Kyle seemed to sense my mood and started fussing. Holding and soothing Kyle, I felt my spirits sink. How could someone so kind change so drastically? Or is this his true nature? Eventually, I began to think that, in some ways, Jane was better than John. She showed interest in Kyle, played with him, and talked to him. John, on the other hand, was strangely indifferent to Kyle. After much persistence on my part, he started bathing Kyle on weekends but did nothing else. Even when in the same room, John was engrossed in cell phone games, shooing Kyle away when he crawled over. He was completely indifferent, no matter how cute Kyle's laughter was or how he babbled. Will he ever act like a father? Childcare had just begun, but I felt crushed by anxiety. Despite Jane's numerous visits with her different friends, she stopped when Kyle turned 3. As Kyle developed a personality and started expressing opinions, he apparently became less cute to her. After enjoying a period of peace, I approached John. I'd like to start working again. There's a vacancy at a nearby daycare.
Why? My salary is enough.
John's displeasure was evident.
A wife should stay home and take care of her husband and kid.
I almost laughed at the outdated sentiment, but kept a submissive demeanor and pleaded. I want to save for Kyle's college fund. I'll work part-time, please.
Fine, but don't let the housework slip.
I'm planning to work at my uncle's company. John smirked.
Oh, using connections?
They need a female office worker.
Whatever. It's a small, unreliable company, but do your best.
His mocking tone irritated me, and I pursed my lips. Your company does business with them, you know?
Well, just make sure you don't cause any trouble for us.
I felt enraged by his arrogant remarks, especially coming from someone who was just a mid-level manager. I decided to work hard and save money, planning to divorce him someday. Secretly holding on to that thought, I worked diligently. As Kyle grew and I could manage housework better, I transitioned to full-time employment and threw myself even more into my work. One evening, John came home and walked into the dining room looking dejected. Welcome back. What's wrong?
My company is going under.
What?
They declared bankruptcy.
I quickly checked my phone and saw news articles about John's company. Stunned, I watched John look down with a troubled expression. There had been reports of declining performance, but I never expected this. What are you going to do?
I'll have to find another job.
John threw his work bag on the floor, sounding defeated. Panic began to set in. While we could manage on my salary, saving would be difficult. For now, I would have to dip into the secret divorce fund I had been saving and use it for Kyle's college fund. Even though John was bossy at home, he provided enough for our living expenses. So losing his income was a huge blow. I could only hope he'd find a new job before his unemployment benefits ran out. But John only diligently visited the job center for the first month. Soon, he settled into a lazy routine of staying up late and sleeping in. I was also frustrated that John kept all his unemployment benefits as his personal spending money, not contributing to the household. Watching him lie on the sofa playing mobiles games while I cooked and vacuumed made my anger flare up many times. Hey, shouldn't you start seriously looking for a job? You're almost 40. It'll be harder to get the job you want once you're over 40. I gently nudged, but John snapped back.
Shut up. I'm looking for a job on job sites.
But I've never seen you writing a resume.
I'm taking my time to choose a company that's worthy of me.
John said arrogantly.
Unlike you, I graduated from a top university. Working for a mediocre company would lower my standards. You don't understand because you're so incompetent.
Oh, is that so? We had countless exchanges like this, with no progress, and 10 years went by. Even when Kyle was studying for college entrance exams during his long breaks, John, unshaven and in sweatpants, was engrossed in games. I often thought about just abandoning him and getting a divorce. With his wealthy family, John would be fine living with Jane. But I felt it was too cruel to kick out an unemployed husband, so 10 years passed without taking that step. Finally losing patience, I decided to use my connections. I asked my uncle to hire John. Luckily, they needed someone for sales at the branch office in the next town, so it worked out perfectly. Hey, how about working at my uncle's company? One night, with a pounding heart, I brought it up to John. When I told them about your background, they said it would be a waste not to have you. Of course, it was a big lie, but predictably, John's pride took the bait.
Well, someone of my caliber wouldn't be easy to find for a small company. They must be desperate for me.
He looked somewhat pleased. Can I go ahead with it?
Hum, what should I do?
After a moment of pretending to consider, John's eyes were glued to my phone screen. Oh, this! It's from a new product exhibition,
Hum, looks fun.
he muttered nostalgically.
All right, I'll work at your uncle's company.
Really? That's great.
But I want to work only 3 days a week since it's been a while. Also, I want to leave on time.
I was at a loss for words. Oh, well, as you know, our company has a full 2-day weekend policy. There's overtime at the end of the month and during busy periods. Special treatment would be difficult. John's eyes narrowed.
Hey, I'm getting back to work after a long time. It's like rehab for me. You want to push me into long hours right away? What if delicate me gets sick?
His words made me furious. I've been working full-time while balancing housework and childcare for the past 10 years, supporting you. But I swallowed my complaints, knowing it would be troublesome if he got upset. After consulting with my uncle, John finally ended his 10 years of unemployment as a low-paid part-time worker. Once John started working again, he quickly became more energetic. Seeing him clean-shaven and dressed in a suit made my heart swell. Though he had thinned hair and a changed physique, a bit of his youthful vigor returned. Maybe it wouldn't be long before he could work as vigorously as before. Then we could get him to contribute to the household expenses again. Feeling relieved, I suddenly wondered. It's fine that he works 3 days a week, but how does he spend the other 4 days? On his days off, when I come home from work, he's always out. He comes back late at night, smelling of alcohol, so he might be going to bars, but how could he afford that on such a low salary? Sometimes there's even a woman's perfume on his clothes, which is suspicious. If it were a bar, the scent would likely be mixed, but it's always the same perfume. About a year after he started his new job, I received a photo and a message from an unknown number on my phone. It was a photo of a heavily made-up woman and John snuggled up in bed. The woman looked familiar, and then I remembered. It was Natalie Thompson, who had attended our company's product launch event.
I'm John's mistress. Can't wait to live together soon.
I was stunned, but not very shocked. My feelings for John had long since cooled. So he was cheating after all. I sighed. He must have found Natalie's details from the company's event photos and pursued a relationship with her. As I stared at the picture, anger started to build up. How could he do this after getting a job through my connection? I called John, but the phone rang endlessly, and he didn't read any of my angry messages. That night, John didn't come home. To make matters worse, he began skipping work without notice the next day. What are you thinking, neglecting work for your mistress? You're going to lose the job you just got. I sent this during my lunch break, but still no response. Feeling frustrated, I returned home to find the apartment strangely spacious. Looking around, I noticed much of our furniture was gone. The Scandinavian sofa set, wooden table, two-person dining table, stylish shelves, and chic TV stand. All things I bought with my salary. As I stood in shock, I saw a piece of paper in the middle of the room. It was written in round letters and John's handwriting.
John is mine now.
I moved to Natalie's place. Don't bother trying to bring me back.
Crushing the note, I called John again. The moment the call connected, I yelled, "What the hell are you thinking? Where are you?"
You're so upset. This is hilarious.
A sweet, mocking voice answered. It was probably Natalie.
You want me to hire you?
What?
If you're okay with being my maid, I can give you my address.
Her haughty tone almost made me laugh. Natalie seemed to be under a huge misunderstanding. All right then, I guess we're getting divorced. Goodbye to my $7.80 an hour husband.
Say no more.
Oh, she really has no clue. Poor thing. Suppressing my laughter, I spoke in a pitiful voice. I'd be lost if John left me. How am I supposed to live now? Natalie burst out laughing on the other end.
You're such a parasite. It's pathetic how a wife gets dumped by her husband.
It's hard, but I don't want to make John hate me more by arguing. Tell him I'll call once the divorce is ready.
You're so understanding. Bye then.
I clenched my teeth as I hung up the phone. Enough of them mocking me. Just watch. I'll drag them from the height of happiness to the depths of despair. I swore this in my heart. I confided in my uncle about the situation and got John fired, deciding to make them pay. I hired a private investigator to look into John and Natalie, and I did my own research as much as possible. 2 weeks later, I sent John a message. I want to talk about our divorce. Please come over with Natalie. Right on time, the two of them showed up, holding hands and grinning as if to flaunt their relationship. As I invited them into the living room, Natalie sneered.
Oh my, you haven't replaced the furniture yet? You must be really poor. Well, you were just a parasite living off John's big corporate job, so I guess it makes sense.
Excuse me? You stole our furniture and have the nerve to say that? I could report you to the police.
How rude. He just took the furniture he bought when he moved. As John told me, you're dumb.
Natalie's disdainful gaze shifted from me to John, who looked away uncomfortably. He's clearly putting on airs for Natalie. When we replaced the old furniture, John was unemployed and we relied solely on my salary. Who's the one with no brains, lying so blatantly? Cursing him inwardly, I turned to John. John, you feel the same way, right? You want to divorce me?
Yeah,
John nodded grimly.
I'm sick of taking care of an old, worn-out woman like you.
He spat out angrily.
Meeting Natalie made me realize it. The last 20 years of our marriage have been a mess, and it's all your fault.
I couldn't believe my ears. That's what I should be saying.
Being with you dragged me down. That's why I'm leaving you and starting over.
Then he extended his hand to me. What?
Alimony, after 20 years of you being a burden, I deserve compensation.
John leaned back arrogantly.
I'm generous, so I'll settle for $100,000. Come on, pay up. You can just give me your bank account details, and I'll withdraw it myself.
His condescending tone made me sad rather than angry. He's demanding money because he can't afford to live with Natalie on his current salary. For all his pride, he has no qualms about doing this. Fine. It must be expensive to live with 5 people.
Really? Are you serious?
After his eyes lit up, John tilted his head.
5 people?
Smiling, I explained to John. Yes, Natalie and her 3 kids, 9th grade, 6th grade, and 5 years old, right? They're all girls. Natalie's face was drained of color. John looked back and forth between Natalie and me, bewildered.
Wait, kids? I knew she was divorced, but I didn't know about any kids. Natalie, is this true?
Natalie remained silent, her mouth tightly shut. John's eyes widened in shock.
Seriously? No way.
He muttered, looking crestfallen. John must have cheated because Natalie told him she was childless despite being divorced. I pulled out the investigation report and photos from the envelope given by the detective and spread out pictures of Natalie with her children on the floor. Good luck with those tough years, John. I encouraged him with a hint of sarcasm. You declared you hated kids and dumped all the childcare on me, not even trying to bond with your own son. I really wonder if you can win over someone else's kids.
I'll be fine. They're all cute like Natalie, so I'm sure I'll grow to love them.
John forced a smile and held Natalie's hand. Natalie looked up, her face still showing anxiety. Just then, the doorbell rang, and Jane's voice came through the intercom. John stiffened.
Why is Mom here?
When I told her we were divorcing because of your affair, she insisted on coming. John looked like he was chewing on something bitter. When I opened the door, Jane pushed past me into the room. Her footsteps were heavy as she entered the living room and started yelling at Natalie.
You homewrecker.
Natalie's eyes widened. Then she quickly put on a smile and tried to charm Jane.
Jane, their marriage was already broken, so that's not really the right word.
No, you're wrong. The thief isn't his wife. It's you. You stole my precious son from me.
Jane pointed a finger at Natalie, spitting as she shouted.
A plain wife and a heavily made-up mistress with kids? John, you really don't know how to pick women.
John hung his head at the scolding.
And 3 daughters? You got tricked by some failure who can't even produce a son? You always get caught by trashy women without me around.
John raised his head and weakly protested.
Don't talk badly about Natalie, Mom. Her ex-husband was a loser. She'll give me a proper heir when we remarry, I promise. Right, Natalie?
Well, yes.
Jane glared at Natalie with hatred.
You think I believe that? If you remarry this mistress, you'll take Kyle. Then I might acknowledge it.
John looked troubled.
No, I don't want him. He's bad at online games and doesn't like me at all. He's not cute at all.
His selfish comment made me furious. He never played with Kyle when he was little, always pushing him away. This is the result. Jane, it's impossible for him to take Kyle. I couldn't help but interject.
Shut up, you. Stay out of this.
Kyle is 19 now. He's living in a dorm at college. He's very independent and plans to live on his own after graduation.
I won't let him do whatever he wants. He's our heir, so it's only right that he returns to his father's home after his parents' divorce.
Jane's eyes blazed. I've never heard of such nonsense. I grew increasingly angry at Jane's irrationality.
John,
Natalie, who had been silent, tugged timidly at John's sleeve.
What is it, Natalie?
John's dopey smile made me angry.
if it's your child, I'm sure they'd be cute, but the number of kids will increase to 4. Will we be okay financially?
Her reasonable concern was met with John's confident response.
Don't worry, Natalie. As I told you, my family is wealthy. Plus, I'm a manager at a big company, so I earn a lot. You'll be secure with me.
Natalie beamed at his words.
That's wonderful. Then I won't have to work at the bar anymore. It's been tough with my age.
You've had it rough, but now I'll take care of you.
John's pretentious words and his embrace of Natalie made me feel sick. I wondered if he ever felt guilty for lying so much. The guest I had invited seemed to feel the same way. Suddenly, the door separating the next room from the living room opened. It was a bit earlier than planned, but the timing couldn't be better.
Whoa!
John screamed at the sight of the sudden appearance. His eyes filled with fear, and he quickly turned his head away. The woman who opened the door looked at the bewildered Jane and Natalie and gave a polite smile.
Nice to meet you. I'm Stella Turner, daughter of the CEO of Turner Industries, where John worked 10 years ago.
What? That major corporation?
Natalie and Jane's eyes widened.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Wait a minute. Isn't that the company where my son currently works?
Yes, Jane. John, what's wrong?
John, who had been sitting confidently across from me, was now trembling violently. See, everything is coming out now. How do you plan to fix this? I couldn't help but smile as I covered my mouth with my hand. I had found it odd. That company didn't follow up at all on the reemployment of its former employees. When I recently rechecked the old newspaper articles, I found that most of the employees had been referred to affiliated companies or subcontractors. So I tracked down a former colleague of John's using an address I found in a letter and asked about the situation back then, and I discovered some shocking facts. John, you were fired just before the company went bankrupt. You were relentlessly pursuing Stella, an intern at the time, which infuriated the CEO. Natalie and Jane were stunned. What an idiot. A 40-year-old mid-level manager chasing a 20-year-old college student? Such overconfidence is laughable. When I let out a derisive laugh, Natalie looked at John with an expression that seemed to say she couldn't believe it.
John, were you really chasing after a college girl?
What's that look for? It's only natural for a man to go after young, rich women. Got a problem with that?
John's brazen attitude shocked Natalie and Jane.
Wait, mid-level manager?
So, John, where do you work now?
My uncle's company. He's an hourly employee making $7.80 an hour. After 10 years of unemployment, I had to push him to work. I explained the details to Natalie and Jane with a smile. I got him the job through my connections at my uncle's company. Even though he's supposed to work all weekdays, he insisted on only working 3 days a week, so I had to plead with my uncle. Jane let out a strange cry. It seemed John hadn't told her anything. Natalie, all the furniture you took was bought with my salary. At the time, John was unemployed, addicted to cell phone games, and had no savings.
No way.
Natalie muttered in shock.
John always said he was supporting his wife. He used to complain that my wife didn't appreciate me enough.
What a joke. I glared at John, who looked embarrassed, and unleashed my pent-up anger. While you were unemployed and lounging around, I worked hard, juggling housework and raising our child.
That's what women are supposed to do. Nothing to brag about.
John shouted back. And yet you always looked down on me, even after I got you a job at my uncle's company, and then you had an affair. How much more do you need to humiliate me?
Shut up. You're just a part-timer hired through connections, acting all high and mighty.
That's old news. I laughed softly.
That's the truth, right?
Too bad. I'm now the executive vice president. When I announced this with a smile, John froze.
What? Executive Vice President?
That's right. And I make more than John did when he was a mid-level manager.
Don't lie. There's no way a third-rate college graduate like you could earn that much.
When I shoved my pay stub in his face, his expression twisted and he hung his head. Just then, Jane seemed to recover from her shock and put her arm around John's shoulder, hurling insults at me.
You're such an insolent wife, defying your husband like that. No wonder John got sick of you and found a mistress.
Ignoring her, tired of dealing with such nonsense, Jane turned to comfort John with a syrupy voice.
John, leave these people and come back to Mommy. I'll find you a proper wife. You can have more kids with someone else.
Yeah, I'll do that.
John looked apologetically at Natalie.
Sorry, Natalie. Mom doesn't approve, so we're done.
At his words, Natalie's face contorted in rage. She jumped up, red with fury.
Good riddance. I thought I'd marry you because you claim to be a manager at a big company, but you're just a liar.
She grabbed her designer bag, pulled out her phone, wallet, and makeup pouch, and threw the bag at John.
Why would I date a guy 15 years older otherwise? You're delusional if you think you're attractive.
Natalie.
Don't touch me.
She shoved his hand away and stormed out, shoulders heaving. Stella, who had watched the entire scene, bowed to me and left as well. Here's the divorce papers. Sign them and file them at the courthouse. If it's too much trouble, just send them back to me in the unclosed envelope. I handed the papers to John, who was frozen with tear-filled eyes, and addressed Jane. We'll handle the alimony through our lawyers. The discussion is over, so please take him with you.
We're leaving. Come on, John. We'll pack your things and pick them up later.
As I saw Jane supporting John out the door, I added one more thing. By the way, please take care of the $80,000 debt he racked up from our joint account. Jane blinked in confusion.
What?
He spent it on online gaming. Since he's unemployed again, I'll be sending the bill to you. I pushed the bewildered Jane and sniffling John out the door and locked it immediately. The next day, John sent back the signed divorce papers, and I submitted them right away. I expected John to argue about the alimony, but to my surprise, the full amount I demanded was deposited into my account. It seemed Jane had paid it to get rid of me quickly. All the furniture John had taken was returned in good condition, which was a relief. When I demanded alimony from Natalie, the amount was deposited into my account. Then, to my surprise, Natalie's mother brought her to my house. Prompted by her mother, Natalie bowed to me, though her face showed displeasure. Her mother was very apologetic, too, She covered the compensation and planned to make Natalie repay it by working extra jobs along with her bar job. It was a relief to know her parents were decent people. Although I thought John would get along well with his mom, their relationship turned sour. Back to being unemployed, John had no intention of finding a job and continued wasting Jane's savings and pension on online gaming.
He used to be so sweet, but his wife ruined him. If this continues, my savings will run out. I wish he'd move out soon.
Apparently, that's what Jane was telling the neighbors. Finally free of John, I felt a sense of clarity and peace in my daily life. I should have cut ties with him sooner if it felt liberating. When I called Kyle, who was in his college dorm, to tell him about our divorce, he responded cheerfully.
You finally did it. Congratulations.
He's still your dad, so you can visit him if you want.
No way. I don't need to see him. You're my only family, Mom.
I laughed at his firm words.
Now you can start your second life, Mom. Enjoy your work and personal life, and don't let anyone hold you back.
Yes, I will. Thank you. His encouraging words brought a smile to my face. From now on, I want to spend the rest of my life happily with Kyle.